Welcome to ModHaus DIY, where small ideas grow into big inspiration. Today we're diving into DIY trash garden ideas, creative ways to turn plastic bottles and waste into charming garden archways and decor. Timestamps are included below, so feel free to jump to the parts that speak to you. And if you have questions, thoughts, or your own twist on these ideas, drop them in the comments. Your creativity might just inspire someone else. Maybe to you, I'm just another face on a screen. But behind this channel is something real. A family, a purpose, and a dream held together by late nights and small moments like this. When you hit subscribe, you're not just boosting a number. You're helping this dream stay alive. You're giving a small creator the courage to keep going. Thank you for being here, and for truly seeing me. There's a gentle kind of magic in giving forgotten things a second life. Along this modest garden path, plastic bottles, once discarded and bound for waste, now stand proudly in bloom. They've been shaped and painted with quiet care, transformed into cheerful daisies, bright sunflowers, and pastel wildflowers that greet each passerby like old friends. The border they form is not merely decorative. It's a handmade celebration of resourcefulness and joy. In the first corner, where the lavender stretches in waves and the patio begins, the soft pinks and pale greens of the bottle flowers blend into the earth as naturally as real blossoms. White pebbles ripple beneath them like a dry stream, framing the pathway with texture and contrast. This space feels calm and tended, like someone whispered their love into the soil and left it to grow. Just a few steps away, the tone shifts. Bottles now glow with bold reds, yellows, and purples. Their petals are painted with vivid precision, each one a tribute to the vibrant optimism of spring. Arranged in a wide circle around a vegetable bed, they add whimsy to function, keeping the soil contained while making the garden sing with color. Tomatoes dangle nearby, and a bamboo trellis rises behind, proving that sustainability can be as playful as it is practical. Then comes the softest curve in the path. A line of painted pink and white bottle blooms guiding your eye gently through low lavender and cheerful daisies. The bottles, nearly identical in shape, have been turned into a marching line of subtle flower patterns. They frame a bed not just with color but with rhythm, giving even this quiet garden corner a sense of movement. Sunlight catches on the curves of the plastic, and the scene glows with the warmth of a late spring morning. What's most powerful here isn't just the beauty, it's the feeling that anyone, anywhere could do this. With a few bottles, a handful of paint, and some garden soil, an ordinary space becomes personal, vibrant, and truly alive. This is trash turned treasure. Waste reimagined as wonder. And all it takes is a little love, a little paint, and a belief that beauty doesn't need to be bought. It can be made by hand. Sometimes the most meaningful borders aren't built to divide, but to nurture, guide, and quietly flourish. Here, along the garden's edge, repurposed gallon jugs rest partially buried in the soil like soft-spoken sentinels. Once mere plastic waste, they now stand reborn, steady, painted with gentle tones of mint, ivory, and sky blue. Their tops open like wide mouths, offering space not just to separate garden beds, but to grow life within them. One row is rich with marigolds and basil, the colors warm and fragrant under the afternoon sun. Bees dip in and out of the orange blooms, while the herbs sway faintly in a breeze that smells of summer. These planters are more than a fence. They're a living line, protective, productive, and quietly beautiful. Step around to the patio, and you'll find the same humble jugs transformed into a corner of calm. They cradle blooming petunias and leafy mint, tucked beside a bamboo bench where someone might sit with a glass of iced tea. The gravel underfoot makes a soft crunch with every step, and terracotta pots lean nearby like old friends watching over the blooms. It's not about perfection, it's about intention. Then a row of strawberries spills joyfully over another fence line, their glossy red fruit hanging low, sweet and ready to be picked. These bottles, some weathered clear, some painted in summery blue, form a lush, edible border leading toward a shaded pergola. Here the jug fence doesn't just divide space, it multiplies it. Every container is a small miracle, a recycled vessel, a gardener's dream, a harvest in waiting. This is DIY that matters, not only because it's accessible, cheap and practical, but because it reshapes what we think waste can become. It teaches patience, it rewards creativity, and it reminds us that a strong, lasting garden isn't always built from bricks or stone. Sometimes it's built from intention, paint, and a few old jugs waiting for a second chance. There are places where the garden doesn't begin with the plants, it begins with the courage to be bold. Lining this quiet patio, a wall of reclaimed oil drums now stands in proud rhythm. Painted in unapologetic shades of crimson, lemon, turquoise, mint, and cobalt, each barrel feels like a burst of personality. No two are the same, yet together they form a chorus, a kind of border that doesn't just contain the garden but lifts it. The first path leads between rainbow drums, freshly painted and arranged like sentries along the flower beds. Salvia sways between the barrels and cosmos lean toward the sun, their stems brushing softly against painted metal. A bamboo trellis stretches above, ready to hold the weight of vines. Early dew still clings to the leaves, while light dances on the bright red and purple curves of each drum. It feels like walking through a page of a storybook. Only here the characters are blooms and barrels. Then, in a cozy corner of the patio, the same drums take on new life, this time standing upright, each with a window cut open like a garden porthole. From those circular openings, nasturtiums spill freely, trailing down to kiss the paved floor. Painted flowers decorate the surface in pastel hues, like something drawn with joy and remembered by heart. A cafe table rests peacefully behind them, framed by flowering vines and protected by nothing but color, shape, and love. And finally, where the patio meets the shaded sitting area, the barrels become companions to rest. Closed, uncut, and softly gleaming, they form a low wall behind rustic wooden chairs and a chimney waiting to be lit. The light here is quieter, more golden. It falls softly on the metal, reflecting gently onto the stone path below, where fallen leaves gather without guilt. This is what happens when you stop throwing things away and start listening to them instead. The garden becomes a canvas, the trash becomes the brush, and somewhere in between all that, amid the color and sunlight and imperfect curves, something truly beautiful begins to grow. In the quiet corners of backyard lawns and beside weathered fences, a different kind of beauty is blooming, one shaped not by luxury but by intention. Here, ordinary PVC pipes, once overlooked, once thrown aside, find a new purpose as guardians of life. They've been fitted into firm rectangular frames, hugging the soil gently but securely, allowing tomatoes, lettuces, radishes, and herbs to flourish in the most orderly kind of chaos. This is a garden not bound by concrete or wood, but by creativity and care. Along one plot, the pipes stand clean and white, forming neat lines that feel at once modern and humble. Inside the frame, kale fans wide in the wind, and lettuces glow green and red in the sun, as if the soil itself had painted them. Each plant has its space, each row its rhythm. Nearby, a green watering can waits patiently as if part of the ritual. There's a sense of effort here, but also of ease. As if someone has finally figured out how to make gardening both tidy and alive. Elsewhere, color speaks. Blue, green, and terracotta red pipes curve around a tomato bed, their bright paint catching the light like a child's toy left lovingly in the grass. The tomatoes droop heavy with fruit, plump, ripe, and abundant. They lean on stakes for support, but the real support comes from below. The upcycled frame, the rich soil, the choice to turn trash into nourishment. And then there are the herbs. Rosemary, oregano, and chives, growing in matte-sanded pipes, simple but steady. The kind of herbs that don't shout for attention, but offer their gifts in scent and seasoning. The bed is small, edged with gravel, touched by morning light, and framed by the tools of a gardener who knows how to coax flavor from forgotten things. These beds remind us that beauty doesn't need to be expensive, just thoughtful. That strength doesn't have to be rigid, just well held. And that a garden isn't measured by size, but by intention. Because when you build your world with what others throw away, it becomes more than a garden, it becomes a quiet act of hope. As the sun slips behind the rooftops and the sky fades into soft lavender and rose, the garden doesn't go dark, it begins to shine. Along a simple wooden fence, rows of discarded bottles now shimmer with life. Each one, hand-painted in playful mosaic patterns, becomes a tiny lighthouse of warmth and color. Blue swirls, yellow teardrops, and ruby red dots. The designs are imperfect, yet they dance under the glow of solar lights tucked gently inside. Together they create more than light, they create feeling. A sense that this little stretch of backyard holds something magical, even after the day is done. In one quiet corner, beneath a bamboo fence softened by climbing ivy, the lights are smaller and more delicate, hung like ornaments from invisible strings. Some are glass, others plastic, but all are lovingly touched by paint. Stars, stained glass leaves, and gemstone specks that catch the eye. The air is hushed here, with lavender blooming below and soft petals falling quietly on the stone floor. This isn't just decor. It's presence. A way to let the garden breathe through color, through glow, through gentleness. Further down the fence, the lights become playful. Abstract shapes in yellow and teal beam across aged wood panels like dancing reflections. They're upside down, mounted cleanly, their lines bold and whimsical. The bottles once held soda or cooking oil. Now they hold mood and memory. The flicker of a solar lamp inside gives just enough warmth to make the echinacea nearby glow with soft outlines, and black-eyed Susans lean into the light as if they remember when they too were just seeds in the dark. What's remarkable isn't the electricity, it's the transformation. These were things left behind, thrown out, faded. And now, they illuminate fences and lives not because they were bought, but because someone believed they were worth saving, worth reimagining, worth lighting up again. And maybe that's what DIY garden design really is. Not just planting and painting, but storytelling through salvage. Letting beauty return in the quietest, most glowing ways. In a corner where concrete ends and curiosity begins, An old plastic bottle finds a second chance, not as waste but as a frame for something wonderful. The smallest flower beds often hold the biggest smiles. In the first garden, half-buried bottles wear pastel coats like Easter eggs: peach, mint, lilac, and sky blue. Each one is nestled upright with its rounded base facing out, as if cupping the earth gently. Within the curved embrace, violas peek out with their velvet faces, tiny alyssum blossoms blanket the ground like lace, and proud snapdragons rise with spires of pink. The morning sun glints off painted plastic, turning reused materials into tiny stained glass windows for bees. The soil, still dewy and dark, cradles more than roots. It nurtures stories of second life and simple delight. Elsewhere on a warm, tiled patio, another flower patch pulses with brighter energy. Upside-down bottles painted in vibrant navy and safety orange form a bold, curved border. A rhythmic pattern of color frames marigolds bursting in amber flame, geraniums dancing in pink, and petunias stretching out in soft white. Between them, rich mulch guards the roots and releases that sweet, earthy scent when the sun heats the stone. Beside this bed, a weathered wooden bench waits with a pair of worn gloves. It's a place where someone rests their hands after tending beauty born from yesterday's trash. And then, in a circle that could only be drawn by love, or perhaps the hand of a child, sits a playful ring of clear plastic bottles. Each one is filled halfway with sand, grounding the base like an anchor while the outer sides smile back at us. Hand-drawn faces, ladybugs and cheerful grins decorate the line. Inside, a wild mix of calendula, cosmos, and sunflowers erupt in golden and fuchsia hues, leaning this way and that like they're playing tag with the breeze. A few bees drift lazily through the patch, their hum blending with the laughter echoing from a swing nearby. On the tiles around the garden, chalk drawings shimmer, hearts, hopscotch trails, and crayon-colored stars, proof that imagination spills beyond the border. These aren't grand gardens. They're not sculpted masterpieces, and they don't need to be. They are humble, joyful things, raised not with money but with care. Made not from new purchases but from bottles once tossed aside. If you have 10 minutes, a few flower seeds, and a smile, you too can frame your own corner of joy. Let your garden remind the world that beauty doesn't come from what we throw away, but from what we choose to keep and how we decide to love it again. At the edge of evening, when the garden quiets and colors begin to blur into softness, there's a moment when ordinary things begin to glow. Here, beneath a humble wooden pergola, something remarkable takes shape, not from fancy fixtures or expensive decor, but from the simple reimagining of plastic jugs. Each lantern that sways gently above was once a forgotten container, destined for the bin. Now they dance on cords of rope and vine, their curves softened by the brush of time and creativity. Some are punched with dainty floral cutouts, their shapes casting petals of light across the wooden floor. Others bloom with hand-painted butterflies and blades of grass, as if caught in a child's daydream and turned to light. The colors vary, muted greens, rusted reds, warm yellows, painted not for perfection, but to echo the charm of something handmade, something heartfelt. Inside, simple LEDs or solar bulbs offer a steady, amber glow that flickers like candlelight. It isn't flashy. It doesn't shout. But it whispers warmth, a glow that says, sit, stay, watch the light change. Below the canopy, terracotta pots cradle rosemary and lavender, releasing their scents into the cooling night. Wicker chairs creak softly as someone leans back, sipping tea or listening to the wind brush through grapevine leaves overhead. This is not a showcase garden. It's a story garden. A space shaped not by rules but by reuse, by giving second life to what others overlook. And the beauty lies not just in how the lanterns look, but in how they make people feel. There's something tender about a recycled jug turned soft glowing lantern. It tells the eye that elegance can rise from waste. That even under a pergola stitched with ivy and shadow, discarded things can still shine. If you'd like to try it yourself, Start with a few old gallon containers. Wash and dry them. Cut shapes or punch patterns using a hot awl or small blade. Add string, paint, and a soft light inside, and hang them where evening finds you most often. You don't need a perfect plan. Just the will to see beauty where others don't. And in the hush of twilight, you may just find that your garden begins to glow with stories too. Somewhere along the fence line of an ordinary backyard, where the wind brushes softly against the old timber and the morning sun dances through dappled shadows, a new kind of garden takes root, not in the soil but in the air. These are the forgotten pipes, once tossed aside, now reborn with color and life, hanging like suspended verses of a poem on weathered wood. In the first garden, we see humble PVC pipes painted in earthy tones, clay brown, sage green, soft ivory, cut lengthwise and slung securely with thick jute rope. They hang gently from an old wooden fence, cradling pansies, cherry tomatoes, and trails of creeping jenny. This is not just a planter, it's a quiet reclamation. The way the violas burst in soft purple and yellow among the greens gives the impression of laughter and bloom, spilling from old industrial bones. Dew still clings to the leaves, a reminder of early morning promise. And if you sit long enough, you may just see a bee hover in curiosity, drawn to this floral balcony in the breeze. Elsewhere, under a farmhouse pergola stitched with vines, the air holds the scent of lavender and mint. The pipes here are not only planters but part of the decor, painted white and gently worn, like pages from an old journal. They hang in pairs, swinging slightly with the afternoon wind. Bees hum around them, circling from bloom to bloom. You'll notice how they're suspended from the strong frame above, transforming the open air into layers of herbal harmony. The pebbled ground beneath reflects soft evening light, and the string lights overhead begin their faint golden glow. If you've ever dreamed of sipping tea while surrounded by a living chandelier of herbs, this is your blueprint. And in the most playful rendition of all, a wall bursts into color. Red, blue, yellow pipes form a perfect vertical grid garden. Pansies in every shade and curling nasturtium vines tumble from each hole. It's cheerful and unapologetically bold, ideal for tiny yards with limited soil but endless potential. The glossy paint bounces the afternoon light just right, while the shadows of the blossoms draw natural patterns on the wooden fence behind them. There's something deeply satisfying in the geometry, neat rows of circular pipe ends, yet wild nature growing freely from each one. It tells us that creativity doesn't ask for space, only intention. These rustic pipe baskets remind us that beauty doesn't have to be new, that even the mundane, those tubes once used to carry water or cables, can become vessels for life, color, and charm. All it takes is a saw, some paint, a bit of rope, and the patience to dream. This is gardening as storytelling. And this chapter begins with what we thought was trash, reimagined, rooted, and hanging proudly beneath the open sky. Beneath the hush of a soft spring breeze, a modest patch of earth begins to hum with life. No fancy tools, no imported parts, just hands, heart, and a handful of trash bottles once headed for the bin. In the quiet of the morning, this dome of gleaming plastic, cut, curved, and bound together with patient fingers, now rises above tender greens. From a distance, it looks like a quilt of light, each bottle catching the sun like a dewdrop, warming the soil beneath with the same comfort of a glasshouse, but without the price tag. Spinach leaves unfurled gently inside the arched shelter, their edges trembling slightly in the filtered light that seeps through the makeshift canopy. Lettuce and coriander whisper against one another, soaking up the moisture caught in the air. The structure, framed by bamboo stakes and tied with coarse garden twine, is humble in its build yet brilliant in its purpose, keeping warmth in, letting hope out. Next to it, a watering can leans casually against a wooden leg. The soil is soft, dark, and generous. And while this setup might appear small, it tells a mighty story, that anyone from any corner of the world can start something alive with what they already have. A second design rises not far off, a more angular creation like a weathered chapel of greens. Wooden beams stand firm like old friends, and sliced gallon jugs hang in rows, forming a shingled wall of translucent guardians. Within this triangle-shaped haven, basil and arugula stretch upward. Tiny droplets cling to the inside of each bottle, refracting the sunlight in thousands of sparkles, nature's way of saying thank you. And then, for those with space and ambition, the dome of stacked gallon bottles becomes a centerpiece. Built like a honeycomb from yesterday's water jugs, this curved greenhouse shelters pepper seedlings with care. Gravel surrounds it like a quiet moat. The air within is humid, still, almost sacred, proof that even the simplest shapes, repeated with intention, can become sanctuaries. You don't need a greenhouse catalog or a landscaper's degree. Just vision, a bit of string, and the patience to give bottles a second life. These upcycled sanctuaries prove that gardens can bloom not in spite of trash, but because of it. So next time you drink from a plastic bottle, pause before tossing it aside. That empty jug might just be the roof over your lettuce tomorrow. Somewhere between the hum of a sleepy backyard and the hush of early morning, a forgotten fence began to bloom. Not with roses or jasmine, but with discarded jugs, painted bottles, and pipes that had once carried water, now carrying life in a new form. This is where the magic begins. A vertical wall of succulents, soft and plump, tucked into planters made from yesterday's trash. They line the fence like friendly neighbors, some nestled in pastel-powdered containers, others bursting from cut plastic bottles trimmed at an angle, their edges softened and reshaped by hand. Each plant tells a different story. The string of pearls cascade like green rain over a seafoam blue jug. Echeveria rosettes crowd around one another inside a mustard bottle pouch, their leaves flushed with pink under the sunrise. Chalky shades of sage, dusty rose, and faded aqua speak of gentle care and a love for softness, even in hard things. No two planters are the same. A repurposed vinegar jug stands tall with succulents rising like a crown. A teal detergent bottle, now a cradle for hens and chicks, rests beside a vintage pink milk container, showing off its new skin, scratched but full of charm. Behind all this, the wooden fence holds them up with quiet dignity. It becomes a stage for these unlikely actors, bringing a rustic sense of order to what once seemed like random trash. And in that quiet alchemy of form and color, something truly tender emerges. Proof that beauty doesn't need to be expensive or new. This wall doesn't shout. It whispers. And in that whisper, it reminds us, the smallest spaces can bloom and the simplest things, if seen with love, can be transformed into something that makes people stop, smile and say, I want to try that too. So next time your hands hover over the recycling bin, hesitate. That jug, that bottle, that piece of pipe, maybe it isn't done yet. Maybe it's just waiting for a new story. There are quiet kinds of magic that don't arrive with grand gestures, but with the scrape of a metal blade on old steel, the creak of a weathered fence, and the soft clatter of gravel underfoot. In one modest backyard, that magic began with nothing more than a row of discarded oil drums. Each one stood dented and rusting once, the kind of junk most people rush to hide or haul away. But someone saw more. With a careful cut and a curve shaped by hand, the barrels transformed. Their worn surfaces were reborn in new coats of cheerful color. Sunshine yellow, ocean turquoise, warm coral pink. Not one the same, but all belonging to each other, like a parade of misfit joys lined up beside the fence. The backrest of each chair curves like the arc of a smile, and the armrests, once rigid steel, now invite you in like an old friend. They sit solid on a gravel floor, leaves tucked into the corners as if nature herself approves. Hanging baskets sway gently above them, vines curling their way around the fence like secret handwriting. But these are more than seats. They define the edge of the garden with personality and warmth. A garden border that doesn't just separate space, it hosts it. A place to sip lemonade, share stories, or simply rest your eyes on a world that chose to reuse instead of replace. The beauty lies in its honesty. You can see the screws, the weld lines, the little scratches that speak of effort, not perfection. And maybe that's why it feels so real, because it was made, not bought. So if your fence is bare and your space is small, don't look away from the junk. Look through it. There may be a seat waiting to be shaped, a color ready to shine, and a backyard corner just waiting to feel like home. In a quiet corner of a humble backyard, an archway stands not of stone or iron, but of discarded bottles reborn in color. Each plastic form, once forgotten, is now painted with joy: sky blue, sunflower yellow, bold cherry red. Together, they form a playful rainbow that welcomes anyone who steps through. The arch isn't just charming. It tells a story of hands that painted with patience, of afternoons spent stringing shapes together, of a decision not to discard but to dream. Beneath it, a gentle gravel path curves inward, flanked by daisies and baby's breath that nod with the wind like soft applause. Tiny solar lights edge the walk, leading to a pergola where morning coffee or evening rest might follow. Further along, in another small garden, someone else has chosen calm over clutter. Here, reused bottles sway from a minimalist arch frame. Some are left clear like morning dew, others wear a wash of pastel, sunset pinks, minty blues, and lavender. Between them, hanging lights glow quietly, turning recycled plastic into lanterns of soft magic when dusk falls. Around the base, marigolds bloom bright as laughter, while ivy climbs the wooden fence in silent celebration. And deeper still into the garden's heart, there lies a more rustic archway, where soft seafoam, coral, and lavender bottles rise like columns holding up the sky. Morning glory vines reach toward the sun, wrapping the arch in nature's embrace. Beneath, a stone path meanders between zinnias and leafy crops, as if inviting visitors not just to walk, but to wonder. This is not just decor. It's proof that beauty lives in the unexpected, where junk becomes joy and trash turns into treasure. And anyone with enough heart and a handful of patience can build their own gateway to magic from what the world throws away.